Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, we're going to talk about the state of the education system in 2023. Um, I'm probably going to be one of the only Korean people that you meet, or one of the very few Korean people that you meet, who is actively against college. Now, the vast majority of Korean people, for some reason, are obsessed with going to college, even if they get little to no return from it. In fact, in Korea, there's a saying called "enpo sedae." So that means like the generation that's given up pretty much everything because they have little to no prospects in their future. So it's like you work hard to go to college, become unemployed, and then probably your life ends or something. You know what I mean? Like you don't get anything from it. They kind of know it, but they just kind of do it anyways. Um, I don't really get it. I don't know why people like do it, but it's probably why like Korean society is kind of failing, right? So, but here's the thing many societies are failing, and that's because it's about a lack of leadership. And one of the ways that we can empower our citizens and our fellow people is through education. But if we provide low quality education to our citizens, they're not going to be an ideal citizen who's going to be an entrepreneur who's going to make the world better. They're just going to be a useless consumer who just buys stuff and doesn't contribute anything to the world. And it all starts with our education system, right? And this was kind of written about by Robert Kiyosaki back in, I think, the late 70s. You know, his first book wasn't Rich Dad Poor Dad. His first book was If You Want to Be Rich, Don't Go to School. And to be honest, out of all the books that he's written, I know he's like written a ton of books, and I don't even know how he like writes all those books because most of his things sit most of them kind of say the same thing over and over again. But my favorite book out of all the books he's written is the first one, which is if you want to be rich, don't go to school. It has so much great critiques about the education system. I love it. Now, the criticism of the education system has been there for quite a while. You could look up names like John Taylor Gatto. Um, what else? He was a New York school teacher of the year, I think, for 2 years or something. And then he wrote an op-ed editorial about how he quits because he knows that school harms children. And then he wrote this expose about how the school system is just this dumbing down system to produce factory workers for the Industrial Revolution. So now we live in the post-industrial society, and so in the post-industrial society, a lot of the methods for teaching kids and even students in general is just plain outdated, right? But nothing has changed since the 100 years. You could probably go back and you could just see the same methods to educate students, and that's probably why the big dysfunction occurs because they're not being educated for the world that exists today. Okay, so higher overselling of higher education. So there's this interesting article by the James G. Martin Center. So if you just do a Google search on the overselling of higher education, and I think previously they called it the Pope Center. It was in North Carolina, or it is in North Carolina, I think. Um, Written by George Leaf in 2006. And shout outs to George. I know you, but we haven't talked in about more than 15 years. Um, about the overselling of higher education, and I think when I first read that, it was quite depressing to me to know that higher education has been dysfunctional for quite a long time. In fact, I remember a long time ago when I tutored the daughter of a dentist, or two daughters of a dentist who went to UCLA for both undergrad and dental school. He told me that when he went to UCLA, that nobody in general would talk to each other, and there was no feeling of community. And I thought that was just incredibly strange how he would stay in such an institution for so many years of his life. Like he would stay in so many years of life, but he told me even back then in the 70s when he went, it was, I guess, maybe he didn't view it as dysfunctional, but in my view, it was dysfunctional, and it's been dysfunctional for a long time. So if you're a current college student, or maybe someone at the end of high school or you're about to graduate college, or maybe you have graduated college, maybe you've had a thought in your head thinking, "May is this even worth it?" And that's probably because you haven't been served by the people in your college. But ironically, I do meet a good number of people close to my age who kind of, I think they exaggerate what they got from college. And maybe it's like one of those Stockholm syndrome things too. So, okay, so here's some points that I kind of want to raise. So, I guess that my first question is, what are we expecting to get from college? So is it deep friendships, a a profound and transformative education experience, higher income? And so what is it that we expect to get, and do these expectations meet reality? And so some Google searches that you do, if just on college students, will show you high rates of depression. And so if there's high rates of depression in college students, it probably means that the social environment they are in is not really good for them. And I remember when I was a college student, I remember what an antisocial environment it seemed. Like at least high school, people knew your name. But in college, people would go to class, not even professor or other students knew your name. And I was like, why am I here? How am I supposed to create, quote, lifelong friendships with these people if they don't even try to get to know your name? And okay, funny thing about that too, when it comes to friendships, back in the day, I used to like do Google searches on or actually searches in Korean search engines, and I would write like or type in like which friends are better, high school friends or college friends in those Korean search engines, and people would always like write 95% of the time in the Korean search engines that high school friends were better. Like high school friends are authentic, and then the college friends are like they use you and they're not real and they only want something from me. I was like, dang, like that's kind of like the opposite of what American people would say, right? But I just think Korean tune people are a little bit more in tune with how their relationships with other people were, or at least back then they were. I think everybody's disconnected nowadays because of smartphones and social media or whatever. But I remember seeing that. I was like, dang, like that's crazy because Korean society is really obsessed with going to college. I don't think they're obsessed nowadays. And when I say not as obsessed, I mean just like a few people are not as obsessed with going to college because I actually read a study that people are starting to drop out. Just a few number of people starting to drop out at the most prestigious university, Seoul National University in Korea. Um, but that never happened before because that was everybody's life goal to get into the top three universities and then just be a lazy slug and be part of that maybe old boy network, and get a job for the rest of your life as something, who knows what. Okay, so back to my point. So yes, um, so even back then, people were having discussions about how college friends were just not as good as the high school friends. Like the high school friends were much more authentic. And, I remember thinking like, why is Korean society so obsessed with going to college if they know that the high school they always say like high school friends are the best friends. I just always thought that was really strange. So I think the people that you meet in college wouldn't, I don't mind making good friends even in adulthood. It's just if you're in an environment where everybody's not, their true self, or you can't make authentic relationships, that's probably the reason why high rates of depression appear, in addition to social media, right? So everybody's looking good in social media and no one's being their true self. So that probably happened outside of college too, which is why the depression rate is so high in pretty much all age groups. Another thing too is the student loan debt, right? So one of the things you can do with Google searches is just show like what's the student loan debt, and then you'll see that it's insane. And a lot of people can't find jobs. Other thing too is the outdated teaching methods. If I go to college, I think after one day I'd be like mentally breaking down because the teaching methods are so outdated, right? Nothing's changed from like the Industrial Revolution, probably. You have one guy in a lecture who's talking to a big stadium of 100 people. Those are the worst. And I'll be honest, my biggest regret probably, and like I said before, I'm probably the only Korean person um, that I know who's actively against college. Although what's funny is I did some real recent Google searches in Korean search engines, and I did get some hits about people thinking college is a waste of time, which didn't really happen 20 years ago. But back to my point is that expectations don't really meet reality. So the things that the colleges marketing themselves for you in order to attract you as a student aren't really there. It's kind of an illusion. In fact, college is probably the first place where I learned about how marketing is more important than the product. The product that they're selling you doesn't really exist, right? They're not giving you a transformative education experience. They're just kind of uh, passing you along through the system, just giving you debt and then trying to get you out there as soon as possible. And that's probably why, like, one of the reasons why our society is failing because of a lack of leadership and a lack or, you know, I guess lack of willingness to lead young people to the next, I don't want to say generation, I don't know if it's the right word, to the next, to the future, essentially. Okay. All right. So, this is Korea Atlanta Mentorship. So one of the things that we do offer is education that's different from the one you will learn in college. Um, doesn't mean that if you go to college that your life is over, although I would say it's more of a negative than anything else. My biggest regret in life was going to college. But like I said before, we do offer education and mentoring services. If you're interested in joining our group, go ahead and click the link of the Google form below, or you could email us at our email address by going to the about page of our YouTube channel. All right, have a great day, everybody, and we will speak soon.